Have you heard mysteries about hunters, especially the one that hunters shouldn't kill some specific types of animals while their wives are pregnant? Here's the story of one hunter that did it. And what happened to him afterwards was very, very terrible. It started in a village called Ajero. There lived a popular and brave hunter named Kalili. Kalili was the best hunter in the village. He had killed big animals like elephants, lions, and buffaloes. Everyone knew him, and everyone talked about how brave he was. But Kalili had a problem. His wife, Kudi, was the most beautiful woman in the village, but they had no child. They had been married for 10 years, and still there was no baby. Kalili and Kudi wanted a child more than anything. They prayed and wished every day, but nothing happened. Kalili loved Kudi very much, and Kudi loved Kalili too. They had a nice home, and everyone admired them. But yet something was missing. The other villagers had children who played and laughed, but Kalili and Kudi's house was always quiet. When Kalili looked at Kudi, he saw the sadness in her eyes. It made his heart feel heavy. He could bring home big animals, but he could not bring home a child, and that made him very sad. One day, Kalili came back from the forest, tired but happy. He saw Kudi standing at their door with a big smile on her face. She was glowing. Kalili asked, "Kudi, what is it?" Kudi looked at him, her eyes shining like stars. "Kalili," she said softly, "I am pregnant. We are going to have a baby." Kalili couldn't believe his ears. He jumped up and down, laughing and shouting with joy. "A baby! A baby!" he cried. The whole village heard him and came running to see what was happening. When they heard the news, they all cheered. "Kalili and Kudi are having a baby," they shouted. The drums were played and everyone danced in the village square. It was a day of joy. Kalili looked at Kudi and promised, "I will not go hunting. I will stay with you and take care of you and our baby." Kudi was so happy. For the first time, Kalili stayed at home. He didn't run off to the forest. He was there with Kudi every day, helping her and making sure she was safe and healthy. They talked about the baby and what they would name it. They smiled and laughed, feeling so much happiness in their hearts. The days were bright and full of hope. They were finally going to be a family. 3 months passed and Kalili started to worry. He looked at the food they had left. It wasn't much. He looked at the money they had. It was almost gone. Kalili sighed. "If I don't go hunting, we won't have enough," he thought. One night, as they sat by the fire, Kalili spoke to Kudi. "Kudi," he said softly, "I need to go back to the forest, just for a short time. Only 3 days. We need food and money for when the baby comes." Kudi's smile faded. She remembered the promise Kalili made to stay with her. "But you promised," she said, holding his hand. "You said you wouldn't leave until the baby is born." Kalili nodded, his heart heavy. "I know, Kudi, but if I don't go, we might not have enough to take care of the baby." He tried to smile. "I will be back before you know it. Just 3 days." Kudi looked at him with sad eyes. She didn't want him to go, but she knew he was right. Slowly, she nodded. "All right, but promise you will be safe and come back in 3 days." "I promise," Kalili said, holding her close. The next morning, Kalili packed his rifle and set off into the forest. He felt bad leaving Kudi, but he knew he had to provide for them. As he walked deeper into the forest, he told himself he would return quickly, just like he promised. Kalili walked into the forest full of hope. He set his traps and got his rifle ready. He waited quietly, looking for any sign of an animal. But the forest was silent. The whole day passed, and he didn't see anything, not even a small bird. Khalili was puzzled. This had never happened before. The forest was always full of life. He thought, maybe tomorrow will be better. The next morning, Khalili checked his traps. They were empty. No footprints on the ground, no sounds in the bushes. It was like the forest was hiding from him. Khalili felt a chill run through his body. Something didn't feel right, but he didn't know what. He stayed the night in his camp, hoping that the next day would be different. He knew he had only one more day to find something before he had to return home. On the third day, Khalili woke up early. He was worried. He had promised Kudi he would return in 3 days, but he had nothing to show. He couldn't go back to the village empty-handed. The thought of facing everyone without a catch made him feel ashamed. Khalili told himself, I must find something today. He picked up his rifle and set out deeper into the forest, to places even the bravest hunters seldom went. The day went by, and still he found nothing. The sun began to sink, casting long shadows through the trees. Khalili felt tired and defeated. Just when he was about to turn back and leave for the village, he saw it, a movement in the bushes. He held his breath and crouched down. There, in the clearing, was an antelope. It was beautiful and graceful, but something was different. Khalili looked closer and realized it was pregnant. Khalili froze. He remembered the old tales, the ones that said, never kill a pregnant animal when your wife is pregnant. The elders always warned hunters about this. They said it brought bad luck. But Khalili shook his head. No, he thought. I can't go home with nothing. He needed to catch something. He needed to prove he was still the great hunter everyone believed him to be. He thought, if I don't catch this antelope, everyone will laugh at me. He raised his rifle and aimed, his hands shaking just a bit. The antelope turned and looked at him, its eyes large and soft. For a moment, Khalili hesitated. A voice in his head whispered, don't do it, go back home. But he shook the thought away. I must catch it, he told himself. Just then, the antelope saw him. It turned and ran. Khalili's heart pounded. He chased after it, running through the thick forest, jumping over logs and bushes. He could still hear the voice telling him to stop, but he pushed it away. I can't go back with nothing, he thought. He followed the antelope until it stopped at the edge of a clearing, cornered with nowhere to run. He lifted his rifle, aimed carefully, but then something strange happened. Just for a moment, Khalili blinked. The antelope was not just an antelope. It looked like it was half human, half animal. Its eyes stared straight into his, almost like it was pleading with him. Khalili's heart felt a strange fear he had never felt before. He wanted to stop, to put the rifle down, but his hands had already moved. Before he knew it, the shot rang out. The forest went silent. The antelope fell to the ground, lifeless. Khalili stood there, frozen. What did I just see? He thought. But then he shook his head. It's just a trick, he told himself. Just the forest playing tricks on me. He walked over and picked up the antelope. It looked normal now, just an animal. Khalili took a deep breath and started his journey back to the village, not knowing what trouble he had just brought upon himself. Khalili walked back to the village with the antelope over his shoulder. Each step felt heavy, not just because of the weight, but because of the strange feeling inside him. He kept thinking about what he saw in the forest, the antelope that looked half human. But Khalili pushed those thoughts away. It was just the forest playing tricks, he muttered to himself. Just my mind. When he reached the village, Khalili went straight to the food seller. He sold the antelope quickly, not wanting to keep it for too long. The seller handed him some money. Khalili took the money, feeling a bit lighter. I didn't break the tradition, he thought. We won't eat this meat. He hurried home to Kudi, hiding his worry behind a smile. When Kudi saw him, her face lit up with joy. "You came back as you promised," she said, hugging him tight. Kalili smiled, feeling a bit of the weight lift from his heart. He gave Kudi the money and said, "Here, go buy what we need for a good meal." Kudi went to the market and bought everything to make a delicious feast. She didn't ask Kalili what animal he had caught or where it came from. She was just happy he was home safe. That evening, they sat together and enjoyed the meal. They laughed and talked about their baby and how happy they would be. Kalili watched Kudi smile and felt a little better. Days turned into weeks. Kalili stayed at home, not thinking about hunting. He wanted to be there for Kudi and the baby. They were happy, and it seemed like the strange feeling from the forest had faded away. But deep inside, Kalili knew that something wasn't right, even if he didn't want to admit it. Not long after the feast, Kalili began having strange dreams. In the quiet of the night, when the village was asleep, Kalili would see the antelope again. But this time, it wasn't just an animal. It had the face of a human, and its eyes were full of sadness. In the dream, it stared at him, not saying anything at first. Then it whispered softly, "You shouldn't have done it." Kalili would wake up suddenly, his heart racing, his body covered in sweat. He sat up in bed, trying to catch his breath. He looked over at Kudi, who was peacefully sleeping beside him. He didn't want to disturb her. "It's just a dream," he told himself. "Just my mind playing tricks." But the dreams didn't stop. Every night the same thing happened. The antelope, half human, those sad eyes, and the whispering voice. Kalili tried to be strong. He went about his days as usual, helping Kudi and preparing for the baby. He didn't tell Kudi about the dreams. He didn't want to worry her. But deep inside, he felt a growing fear. The voice from his dreams seemed to follow him, like a shadow he couldn't shake off. Kalili tried to push it away, telling himself that it was just his mind. But the fear was there, creeping into his heart, making him feel like something bad was coming. Weeks turned into months, and Kalili stayed home with Kudi. They waited for their baby's arrival, counting the days. Kalili was there to help Kudi with everything. They laughed, they talked, and they dreamed about the little one who would soon be with them. "We'll have a big feast when the baby comes," Kalili said, smiling at Kudi. For a while, life was peaceful. Kalili thought that whatever happened in the forest was behind them. "It's all over," he told himself. But as Kudi's delivery time got closer, Kalili started to worry again. "The baby will be here soon," he thought. "I need to prepare a feast for when the baby is born." Kalili knew that in their village, when a child is born, hunters come with gifts and everyone gathers to celebrate. "I must catch the best meat," Kalili decided. He wanted the feast to be grand, something to show how happy he was to be a father. One evening, he spoke to Kudi. "I need to go back to the forest," he said. "Just for a short time. I want to catch something special for our baby's feast." Kudi looked at him with worry. "But you promised to stay," she said softly, her hands on her round belly. "The baby could come any day now." Kalili nodded. "I know, Kudi, but this is important. I will be back before the baby is born. I promise." Kudi felt uneasy, but she trusted Kalili. "Be careful," she said. Kalili nodded, kissed her forehead, and the next morning, he took his rifle and left for the forest again. Kudi watched him go, her heart heavy with worry. The house felt quiet and lonely. She prayed that Kalili would return quickly and safely, but deep inside, a small fear began to grow. 3 days after Kalili went back to the forest, Kudi felt a sharp pain in her belly. It's time, she thought, her heart racing. She cried out and the village women rushed to her side. The midwives came quickly, ready to help bring the baby into the world. Stay calm, Kudi, they said, holding her hands. Your baby will be here soon. Kudi breathed deeply and pushed as they told her. But something was wrong. The baby didn't come. Hours turned into a whole day. The midwives tried everything they knew. They gave Kudi herbs. They whispered words of comfort, but nothing worked. Why won't the baby come? One of them whispered, worry lining her face. The next day came, and Kudi was still in labor. She was tired and in pain, but she didn't give up. She pushed and pushed, but it was like the baby was stuck inside her. The midwives looked at each other with fear in their eyes. This has never happened before, they said. The news spread through the village like wildfire. People gathered outside Kudi's house, whispering and praying. Why is the baby not coming? They asked each other. Everyone was worried. They had never seen anything like this before. Kudi cried out in pain, tears rolling down her cheeks. Khalili, she whispered, where are you? But Khalili was deep in the forest, unaware of the struggle at home. He didn't know that Kudi was fighting for their baby's life and her own. The midwife stayed with Kudi, holding her hands and telling her to be strong. Hold on, Kudi, they said, even though they were scared too. Days passed, but the baby stayed inside. It was as if something was keeping the baby from coming into the world. The whole village held its breath, waiting and hoping for a miracle. Khalili returned to the village after a week, carrying a big catch on his back. The feast will be grand, he thought with pride, smiling at the thought of seeing Kudi and their new baby. But as he walked into the village, he noticed something was wrong. The villagers weren't smiling, they weren't cheering. They looked worried and sad. What happened? Khalili asked, his smile fading. An old woman stepped forward, her face lined with worry. Khalili, your wife, Kudi. She's been in labor for 7 days, she said softly. Khalili's heart sank into his stomach. 7 days, he whispered. He dropped his catch and ran to their home. When he saw Kudi, his heart broke. She was lying there, her face pale and tired, eyes closed in pain. The midwives were around her, trying to help, but nothing was working. Kudi, Khalili cried, kneeling beside her. I'm here now. But Kudi was too weak to respond. She just held his hand tightly. Khalili's eyes filled with tears. Why won't the baby come? He asked the midwives. They shook their heads, not knowing what to say. We've tried everything, they whispered. Khalili was desperate. He couldn't just stand by and do nothing. He went into the village searching for answers. He caught native fowls and made sacrifices to the gods, pleading for their help. He prayed with all his heart, asking for the safe delivery of his child and for Kudi to be okay. He sang the ancient songs, danced the sacred dance, and burned herbs that sent smoke curling into the sky. But even after all the prayers and sacrifices, nothing changed. Kudi's screams filled the air, day and night. The villagers gathered outside their home, whispering and looking at Khalili with worried eyes. Some said it was a curse. Others said it was a punishment for something unknown. Khalili felt the weight of their stares, the pressure of their whispers. He looked at Kudi, so tired and weak, her face pale and her eyes full of pain. She had no strength left, but still, the baby would not come. By the end of the day, Khalili couldn't bear it any longer. He had to find out what was happening. He had to understand why this was happening to Kudi and their baby. So, he decided to visit the village chief priest, the wisest man in Ajero. The chief priest knew the old ways and had the power to see things hidden from ordinary eyes. Khalili rushed to his hut, hoping that the priest could give him answers. He knew time was running out. Khalili fell to his knees in front of the priest. "Please help us," he cried. "Kudi has been in labor for 7 days. The baby won't come. I have tried everything." The chief priest looked at Khalili with serious eyes. "Tell me, Khalili," he said slowly, "what animals did you hunt while Kudi was pregnant?" Khalili hesitated for a moment. Then he began to list the animals he had hunted: raccoons, grass cutters, rabbits. When he finally mentioned the antelope, the priest's eyes widened. "You killed a pregnant antelope while your wife was pregnant?" the chief priest asked, his voice low and serious. Khalili nodded, trying to explain. "I didn't eat it," he said quickly. "I sold it to the food seller." "But," the priest shook his head slowly. "You don't understand," he said. "You sold the meat, but it still found its way to you." Khalili felt a coldness grip his heart. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice trembling. The chief priest told him, "When you killed the antelope, you broke an ancient rule. Hunters must never harm a pregnant animal when their wife is carrying a child. You may not have eaten it directly, but it still reached your home." Khalili jumped up and rushed back to his house. He found Kudi lying weakly on the bed, her face pale. "Kudi," he said, his voice shaking, "the day I brought the money home, what meat did you buy?" Kudi, too tired to understand the urgency in his voice, replied softly, "I bought meat from the food seller. I didn't ask what kind it was." In that moment, Khalili realized the terrible truth. They had eaten the meat of the antelope he had killed, the one that was half human in his vision. They had broken the sacred rule, and now they were paying the price. Khalili felt like the ground was falling beneath his feet. He understood now why Kudi was suffering, why their baby couldn't be born. His actions had brought this upon them. Khalili rushed back to the chief priest, his heart pounding with fear. The old man was waiting for him, sitting quietly with his eyes closed as if he already knew what Khalili had discovered. Khalili fell to his knees before the priest, his voice breaking. "What have I done? Please, tell me how to save Kudi and our baby." The chief priest opened his eyes and looked at Khalili with a deep, sorrowful gaze. "The antelope you killed," he began slowly, "was no ordinary animal. It was a forest spirit, one of the guardians of the wild. They take the form of animals to protect the forest, and you, Khalili, killed one of their own, a mother carrying her young." Khalili's eyes widened in horror. He remembered the moment in the forest, how the antelope had looked half human, the voice that had warned him to go back. "The spirits are angry," the chief priest continued. "They demand a life in return. They want your child as payment for what you have done." Khalili's heart sank. The thought of losing his child because of his own actions was too much to bear. "No," he whispered. "There must be another way." The chief priest sighed deeply. "There is one way," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of the words. "You must go back into the forest, deeper than you have ever gone. You must find the spirits and plead with them. Offer them your apologies and promise that you will never hunt an antelope again for the rest of your life. Only they can decide if they will show mercy on you and your family." Khalili felt a wave of fear and regret wash over him. The forest was vast and full of unknown dangers. The spirits were powerful and could be unforgiving, but he had no choice. He had to try. He had to save Kudi and their unborn child, even if it meant risking his own life. "I will go," he said, his voice trembling but determined. "I will find them and make this right." The chief priest gave him a small pouch filled with herbs and a bundle of sacred leaves. Take this with you, he said. It will protect you from the spirit's anger until you reach them. And remember, Kalili, speak with respect and humility. You are not the hunter in their world. You are only a man seeking forgiveness. With that, Kalili set out on his journey into the forest. As he walked, he felt the weight of his rifle on his shoulder, but it no longer gave him comfort. It reminded him of the harm he had caused. The forest around him grew darker and thicker, the trees whispering secrets in the wind. He pushed forward, his heart heavy with fear and regret. He had been a proud hunter, but now he was just a man begging for mercy. The deeper he went, the more he felt the presence of the spirits watching him, judging him. He knew this journey was not just about saving Kudi and the baby. It was about facing the consequences of his actions, of understanding that the forest was not just a place to hunt, but a world full of life and spirits that deserved respect. Kalili wandered deeper into the forest, deeper than he had ever gone before. The trees were tall and twisted, their branches reaching out like long fingers. Shadows moved around him, and strange sounds filled the air. Kalili knew he was in the realm of the spirits now. He walked carefully, feeling their eyes upon him, watching every step he took. He called out to them, his voice trembling. Please hear me. I have come to beg for your forgiveness. For hours he wandered, calling and searching. His legs grew tired and his voice grew hoarse, but he kept going. The forest seemed endless, a maze with no way out. Just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the forest into darkness, Kalili saw a faint glow in the distance. He followed it, his heart pounding, until he came to a clearing. There, under the pale light of the moon, he saw them, the spirits. They were gathered around an ancient tree, their forms shifting between animal and human. Some had the faces of deer, others the eyes of foxes, and in the center was the spirit of the antelope he had killed. They danced silently around the tree, their movements slow and graceful, like a ritual that had been performed for centuries. Kalili felt a chill run through him. He took a deep breath and stepped forward, dropping to his knees. Please, he begged, his voice cracking with emotion. I didn't know you were one of them. I thought you were just an animal. I was desperate. I had to feed my family. I know what I did was wrong. I beg for your forgiveness. Spare my wife and child. The spirits stopped dancing and turned to him, their eyes glowing softly in the dark. The antelope spirit stepped forward, its eyes the same sad eyes he had seen in his dreams. It spoke, its voice echoing like the wind through the trees. Kalili, you took a life that was not yours to take. You broke the balance of the forest. We spirits do not seek revenge, but there are laws older than your village, older than your hunting. Kalili's heart pounded in his chest. He bowed his head, tears streaming down his face. I am sorry, he whispered. I will never hunt again. I promise. I just want my family back. The spirits looked at each other, and a deep, sorrowful silence filled the air. Finally, the antelope spirit spoke again. Your apology is heard, and your promise is accepted. But what has been done cannot be undone. Your wife and child have already passed into our world tonight, as you walk deeper into the forest. Kalili felt as if the ground had been ripped away from beneath him. He fell to his knees, his body shaking with grief. No, no, he choked out, the words barely a whisper. His mind couldn't grasp it, couldn't accept it. Kudi, his dear Kudi, and their unborn child gone. All because of his actions, his pride, his refusal to heed the warnings. The spirits stepped back, their forms shimmering in the moonlight. "We accept your apology, Kalili," the antelope spirit said softly. "But life taken cannot be returned. You must live with the choices you have made." Kalili knelt there, broken and empty. The spirits began to fade back into the forest, their dance continuing, leaving Kalili alone in the clearing. The weight of what he had done pressed down on him like a mountain. He had come seeking forgiveness, but the price had already been paid, a price he could never repay. Kalili walked to the edge of the forest, his heart heavy like a stone. He looked at his rifle, the weapon that had once been his pride. It had brought him many catches, many praises, but now it was nothing more than a reminder of his mistake. Slowly, he laid it down on the ground. "I will never hunt again," he vowed, his voice a whisper carried by the wind. He turned his back on the forest, the place that had been his second home, and walked back to the village. Kalili was no longer the brave hunter everyone knew. He was a changed man, broken by his own actions. He had lost the love of his life, Kudi, and the child he had longed for. His home was empty, filled only with the echoes of what could have been. Days turned into months, and months into years. Kalili lived quietly, staying away from the forests and the hunts. The villagers watched him with sad eyes, remembering the man he used to be. They whispered his story to their children, telling them how Kalili, the great hunter, was caught by the spirits because he ignored the sacred traditions. Kalili never smiled like he used to. He spent his days in silence, carrying the weight of his mistake. When he walked through the village, people lowered their heads in respect and sorrow, for they knew that Kalili's tale was not just about bravery or skill. It was a tale of a man who had learned the hard way that some rules must never be broken, no matter how desperate the times. And so, the story of Kalili, the hunter who broke the sacred law, was told and retold in the village of Ajero. It served as a reminder to all that some things are greater than pride and skill, that the forest and its spirits have their own ways, ways that should be respected. Kalili's tale became a warning, a lesson in humility and the dangers of ignoring what is sacred. I hope you enjoyed the tale. If so, please like the video, share it with your family and friends, comment on it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell for more enchanting tales like this one. Goodbye.